And now it's time for Talking Trade with Sandi Siegel and Ken Wasylik, sponsored by the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, Carroll University, and Michael Best Strategies.
Welcome to another session of Talking Trade. I'm Ken Wasylik, Managing Director of EM Wasylik and Associates, an international business development company. Well, today we're going to do something a little special. There's a lot of talk on the refunds. There's a lot of talk about the Supreme Court decision that was affected every importer. And so to get us up to speed of where we are, we're going to interview my co-host, Sandi Siegel, president of Dey. So welcome, Sandi.
Thanks, Ken. Good to see you and look forward to catching up.
Well, this is great. So yeah, there's a lot of talk about these EPA, and maybe you can explain that, the duty front, the Supreme Court decision, how that affected the importers, what's going on going forward. There's the system that's set up for importers to get their refunds. So give us an update. Where are we?
All right. Well, I'll try to be as concise as I can and just lay a little bit of background. Just a quick reminder on some of these special duties, right? We had the first round in February of 25, and that was the fentanyl duties under IEPA, China, Canada, Mexico, a round of duties, and then another round in April, the reciprocal tariffs. So the big poster where President Trump announced various duties for most countries under, again, this IEPA or International Emergency Economic Powers Act. So those duties were in place and, immediately a concern by importers, the economy, and so forth, and a lot of activity in hopes of overturning that and frankly questioning whether or not the president had the authority to act, independently without a duty investigation, et cetera. So that kind of laid the groundwork. So in May, the Court of International Trades did find that those tariffs were unlawful and that President Trump did not have authority to implement those tariffs. The government immediately appealed. So the duties were continued to be collected, even though they were found unlawful and pending a final ruling and hearing from the Supreme Court. So it was February of this year that the Supreme Court ruled President did not have the authority, stopped collection of the duties, and then turned it back over to the Court of International Trade to say, now you issue, the proceedings and the next step in the process. So that the Court of International Trade ordered Customs to refund all the duties and to figure out how they were going to do that because, over $166 billion in duties were collected and, as stated, over a period of a little bit more than a year. And it gets a little messy, I'll just say, from the regulatory side because Customs, under the normal regulation, can only refund, slightly more than a year period. So depending on the status of the entry. So had to consider that framework. So Customs acted pretty quickly to their credit. In April, they announced their program called CAPE as the acronym for the refund process. And it's a portal that allows Customs to upload a CSV spreadsheet listing their entries and the duties that they paid to get a refund, and fairly straightforward, simpler than you might imagine when the government's involved. So that opened up in April, a couple bookkeeping, housekeeping sorts of things that importers had to do to get all that set up and get things in order to get that process going. It didn't cover all entries, but had some date restrictions, again, because of some regulatory framework. So, but a large majority of the entries, I'll just say, that you could file. And while Customs continued to work on, let us figure out how to deal with these other entries outside time frames or special type of entries. And by that, I mean warehouse entries, slightly different process than a regular released entry. So phase one couldn't accommodate those, and reconciliation, which is a special valuation thing. Through phase two, customs actually has been able to accommodate those, and they're getting ready to roll out phase three. That'll open it up to a lot that are kind of in this, catch-all older time frame of entries.
So it sounds like phase one was relatively straightforward. If you had your entries, you uploaded it into this
Yeah,
CAPE system, and then within a few days or weeks or something, you got the refund. Phase two had another tranche.
right.
I'm reading that out of the 166 billion, only 86 billion have been refunded. So
Yep,
that's another 80 billion that is forthcoming.
right.
So is that in the phase three, or is there something else that importers should be doing?
Um, so there's a couple pieces of that. So first of all, I'll just for information purposes, the typical refund is 60 to 90 days. They get processed pretty quickly, and you get an almost immediate response on if the upload was accepted, and if there's, it does validate for certain criteria. Importers have, I say it's easy. In general, by custom standards, it's easy,
Yeah,
but
yeah, right.
there's
Anything
some
government.
being spit out for various reasons. And there is some scrutiny of the entry by customs, but they worked through some of the programming glitches. There were some, again, processed fairly quickly, and refunds being issued in 60 to 90 days. Customs has reported that there's up to 10,000 refunds that have not been issued because they're waiting for the bank information to be able to transfer via ACH to importers. So that was one of the precursors that kind of was in tandem with establishing this refund, this CAPE portal for importers. At the same time, not only to support CAPE, but for other reasons and, automation and so forth, streamlining processes. Customs mandated that importers create their own account on the ACE Customs portal. Many importers had that, not all. It was voluntary in the past. Now importers must open an ACE account, and they need to enter their banking information for any type of refund now or in the future, for any kind of administrative refund. That's the only way customs will issue refunds, unless the importer nominates a third party to accept refunds. So a lot of importers are scrambling to do that. We've been helping importers set up their ACE account. It's not necessarily the most user-friendly system. There's been some challenges in that. You have to know who the key contact person is at your organization that's on file with customs, just, some kind of housekeeping back office things to get set up, and then get your bank information in there, and then start filing your entries. So we've definitely been helping. A broker can file for refunds, or the importer can file direct, and we've had a lot of customers filing direct. But to your question on, you know, why there's so much money left. We've been really trying to make sure importers are aware, because, just to make sure they know the refunds are available to them. Some importers are choosing not to file. There's some concern in their minds of whether or not that's going to put them under the radar for customs, or have their entries highly scrutinized by customs, which has been something that customs has been very transparent about. We are going to be looking for the accuracy of, how you filed the entry before we start giving you money back, right? So there are some importers concerned about that, and therefore choosing not to file. And then I think there's still, a handful that, despite all of it in the media, are unaware. So we've been trying very hard to directly contact importers, and make sure they are aware.
Yeah, so it sounds like how do I say, the regular sophisticated importers, they have their system all
Right.
put together. The other smaller importers, it's a challenge,
Yeah.
right? They might not have an ACE account, they might not have their entries in 100%
Right.
in accurate terms. Same with some of the So are there any other challenges or obstacles that you see, let's say in the next, 3 to 4 or 5 months
Yeah.
going forward here?
Well, the biggest, so the next big batch, if you will, is the opening of phase three for this refund process. And part of it is the timing issue. And, without going into too much detail, I spoke to the regulations before. There's a cycle of about, just over 300 days from the time goods are released by customs that the entry remains open. And so those were, they're unliquidated. Okay. Liquidation at that 300 plus days kind of closes the file.
Hmm.
And it's kind of a soft close. So anything unliquidated, easy. That went through the round one of CAPE filing. The next phase is there's a period of 180 days from liquidation, plus another, 6 months where there can still be changes made to the entry, either by customs or the importer. Um, and customs said, okay, we up to the first 80 days, it's not a final close. So importers can still file those in the Cape. But if you were in the 80 to 180 day window, you couldn't do it in CAPE. Now you
Mm.
still had up to the 180 days, but now it's a different process known as a protest. And that's where you're writing an argument to customs saying, I want my money back. Duties were, filed illegally. It's not in this easier process, I'll just say. And most importers waited because there was, a lot of understanding that, well, customs will open it up. They'll get permission to bypass the normal regulation of that soft close at, 90 days,
Hmm.
and they'll be able to open it up for the CAPE filing. Well, now what we're learning is that isn't happening. What will happen is if the importer filed a lawsuit in, while they were waiting, which a lot of attorneys were advising, saying, keep your place in line, put a
Right.
placeholder, file a lawsuit, and you can go piggyback on many of the lawsuits filed saying these duties were collected, unlawfully,
Right.
and with the Court of International Trade. So I think about 3 or 4,000 importers filed on that class action lawsuit, and they will be the ones granted refunds on the older entries outside that, time frame in this phase three. So I think we've got a lot of importers scrambling to see if they can now file protest, if they haven't lost their 180-day window for those, earlier February, March, April entries of last year. So timing is critical. And then, if importers haven't, gotten set up on ACE and so forth, again, they need to do it anyway. So, get that going.
So
So,
the advice that I'm hearing from you is to call your friendly customs broker to
all your, yes,
navigate
right.
this. Depending
Yes,
on what category you're in, and
well,
where's the file and what phase and protest and
and
all.
right. And really more than ever, what ACE does in general. And, we try to partner with our customers and obviously the more informed they are, the better we can help them and partner on navigating it. And the ACE portal really gives you access to all of your import information and allows you to download reports, and it also gives you visibility if you work with more than one broker. And so it's I think there's more burden than ever on importers to be involved, right? And to be tracking their own activity because let's face it, there's more at stake than there has been in a
Yeah,
long time with, the
yeah.
duties continuing to escalate and, and customs is demanding that they're more involved and more, responsible for how to
Well,
work.
it should be noted that we're just talking about the IEPA
Right,
tariffs, and we're not talking about the Section 301, Section
right.
232, some of these
All of
other
them.
tariffs,
Yep.
all those other
Yeah,
tariffs that are out there.
exactly.
They're still in there. We're just talking about the refunds under the
Yeah,
Supreme Court decision here.
exactly.
Very good.
Exactly. So,
Well, Sandy, thanks for the update.
yeah,
It sounds like there's a lot of good news that the refunds have been made. A lot of maybe good news, refunds in process, and then maybe there's a segment where maybe the importer is not going to get their refund back. So thank you for the update, and it's always great chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great to try to keep everybody informed and answer questions where we can. So it was good catching up, Ken.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Talking Trade with Sandi Siegel and Ken Wasylik, sponsored by the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, Carroll University, and Michael Best Strategies.